Okay, everybody, it's 2:05. We're going to go ahead and get started. We are recording, so if you need a link to the recording after this is over, just email me. I'll send you that along with the links to the other webinars that we've had. Today, we're going to talk about propagating tropical fruit using seeds. So this is a general information that will help you to propagate using seeds, not just tropical fruit, but really most things. And if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'll try to pay attention to that as we go. So welcome to Tropical Fruit Tuesdays. Today we're going to talk about propagation by seed. September we have 3 coming up because it's every other week. So it'll be the avocado, September 1st. Propagation by cuttings. I think I'm also going to talk about propagation by division on September 15th, as well as cuttings, and then the jackfruit September 29th. So those are what's coming up. If you're not on my email list already, email me. My email is there. It's sflhort@ufl.edu and ask to get on my email list. That email will come up again at the end as well. Okay, before we get into the information, where can you get good information? Number one is the University of Florida EDIS. EDIS, E-D-I-S, is a University of Florida database. And in order to get publications into that database, they have to be peer reviewed. So they have to be very good. The one I'm showing you here is called Tropical and Subtropical Fruit Propagation. That one will talk about what we've talked about in the past, which is propagation by grafting, propagation by air layering. It'll talk about what we're going to talk about in the future, propagation by division and cuttings. And it has what we'll talk about today, propagation by seeds. So there's lots there in EDIS. You can just Google EDIS space UF space and then your topic, and you'll probably get some very good publications. There's good information with other universities. So if you Google let's say breadfruit and then space edu, you'll get some publications by universities on breadfruit, which we don't have a lot of those with the University of Florida. YouTube is another good place to get information because it's very visual. You get to see things. I just watched a video today on how to grow an avocado from seed. You'd be so surprised how many videos there are on that particular topic. It's such an easy thing to do, and there's so many videos. They keep coming up into my stream to tell me I should watch them. So I finally watched one, no big deal, but it's good to see it visually. Also, you can get information from master gardeners. I know there's quite a few master gardeners that are watching today, so they're very good sources of information. I always tell people, especially in my lectures, that your #1 place to get information is your own garden or your own grove, where you're growing things, because if you see it happen in your garden or your grove, you know that it's true. If you just read it, you don't know that it's true. I've read things in very good books that I know are false because you can do what they say you can't do sometimes. So that way, if you see it in your own garden or your own grove, you know it's true. And also beware of the source of where you get information. It's not always good, so always take it with a grain of salt. Okay, so propagation. Why do we propagate? One reason is to make more of what we have, and certainly with seeds we can do that pretty easily. Another reason, and this is more asexual propagation, which is like grafting and air layering and cuttings, it's to maintain a cultivar. If you have that Edward mango and you want to keep that Edward mango, you have to propagate it a certain way, not by seed, which we'll talk about today. Another reason to propagate is to get ahead of disease. And of course, another reason, I'm sure there's more reasons, but another one is for profit, to make more and then to sell what you're going to make. So these are good reasons to propagate. Okay, we're going to divide propagation into 2 types, sexual and asexual. Sexual is by seed. That's what we're going to talk about today. and it has certain characteristics. Asexual is grafting, and you see the picture here on the right. These are grafted mangoes. Air layers, cuttings, division, that's all asexual. And those have different characteristics as well. Okay, so asexual, like I said, cuttings, air layers, division, grafting, tissue culture, these are all types of asexual propagation. But today we're going to talk about sexual propagation. So before we do that, we're going to have a quick, easy poll question. So let's see if I can do this. Okay, see if you can answer this. Growing plants from seed means what? The offspring will be diverse. It can be done economically. It can be done somewhat easily. It's sometimes slow, both A and C, both B and C, and then G, all of the above. I'll give you a little while to answer that. And I can see that my questions are getting too easy. You guys you're on to my all of the above secret, because I can see what you're putting. So far, most of your answers are correct. 85% of you have gotten the correct answer. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll and share the results with you. So the answer was what 85% of you put, all of the above. So growing plants from seed means the offspring will be diverse. It's sexual propagation, so it's very diverse offspring. It's not the exact same as the parent. It can be done economically, so seed can be very cheap. It can be done somewhat easily. Seeds, growing things from seed are sometimes really, really easy, and it is sometimes slow. It does take a while for your plant, especially fruiting plants, to get from seedling stage to where they're old enough to have flowers and fruit. So a couple of you fell for both B and C. One of you fell for the offspring will be diverse, and then most of you got it correct. So you'll see this question again, so let's all get 100% on this next time. Okay, so moving on. So sexual propagation, we talked about most of this, and it is from seed. Sexual propagation is seed from using seeds. It can be very cheap. You can, around the time you're going to plant your vegetables in the winter, a lot of times you can get 300 carrot seeds for $3. So it can be very cheap. It can be very easy. Speaking of carrot seeds, my daughter and I did a vegetable garden one year, and we had never done carrots before, so we put all the carrot seeds out. There were like 300 of them. We put them all out, and they all germinated. So there were like this little forest of carrots. So it can be very easy. Now, it can also have genetic variety. So that's a very good thing, especially in the forest where you have 10,000 oak trees. If they're all a little bit different, if you have a disease that comes in there, that genetic variety can be something that's very helpful. You don't want them to be clones of each other. It can be sometimes slow, meaning that the seeds need to go through all the stages of sexual maturity. So you have a little baby mango, you have a toddler mango, you have elementary school mango, you have a texting mango, you have a Snapchat mango, you have a TikTok mango, you have a mango that gets married, and then finally you have a mango that is old enough to flower and fruit. So it takes a long time. It can take 12, 15 years for something from seed to be ready to fruit. Asexual propagation, it's much, much quicker. And just like genetic variety, it's usually not the same as the parent. So sometimes they are what's called true to seed, where you're gonna propagate things like papayas and annonas, typically you do those by seeds because they're very close to the parent. And then also you have some mangoes that are called polyembryonic, which we'll talk about in a minute, that are also very close to being clones of their parents. But usually they're not the same. So that's why we don't usually use seeds to propagate tropical fruit, because we do want the exact same cultivar. So we use asexual propagation. Okay, a few terms that I want you to know that we're going to go over. Monocot versus dicot. We're just going to show you one slide on that. So monocots are things like palms and bananas and bird of paradise and things like that. And dicots are your woody trees, all your avocados, your mangoes, your carambolas, your lychees, your longans, your annonas, those are dicots. And we'll look at the difference between the two seeds, especially what's called the cotyledon, which gives it its name, the monocot and the dicot. The cotyledons, there's either one or two, and that's how you can tell what's what when they're seedlings. We're going to look at the difference between fleshy seeds and dry seeds. This is important because with fleshy seeds, you're always going to want to remove the flesh in order to plant the seed. Dry seeds, you can just plant them, maybe remove a little thin husk that they might have. But typically the fleshy seeds, you need to remove all the flesh. And then some terms I've talked about briefly, monoembryonic and polyembryonic. So we're going to just go over those. So remember what I told you with seeds, growing from seeds, they're slow. They do need to go through all those stages that I told you. So if you plant an avocado seed, it can take you 15 years before you get the fruit. If you plant a grafted avocado, that thing might try to fruit within the first or second year. And then when it's 3 years old, it's old enough to hold fruit. So that's a characteristics of seed or sexual propagation. They're not the same as the parent, which here you can see is a very good thing. And that's the characteristics in seed, is that the offspring are not the exact same as the parent. So if you plant that Edward seed, you're not going to get an Edward mango. You're going to get an Edward cross with whatever else pollinated it. Okay, so we're looking at monocot and dicot. There's a lot here to look at, but what I just want you to see is you have your seeds here, and they open up, and then the dicot, you see it has two cotyledons. Cotyledons are these first leaves that come out, which there you can see they're withering away, and that is dicot, and then monocot just has one. You see this a lot with palms. If you look under a palm tree, you see a lot of palm seedlings, you'll see that single leaf coming out. So you know it's a monocot. And then dicots, you'll see two little leaves coming out. And that's important because you can't really use grafting or air layers with monocots. You can with dicots. But both of them you can grow using seeds. Okay, so fleshy versus dry. Here we're looking at a jackfruit that's cut open. It's definitely a fleshy fruit. And the fleshy fruits will tell you they're ready by either a smell, like the jackfruit has a strong smell when it's ready to be harvested and planted, or it has a color. Think of mangoes. They're green, and then all of a sudden they're yellow, or all of a sudden they're orange, or all of a sudden they're red. They're telling something in nature, hey, I'm ready, I'm mature, come and get me. So you got to think in nature what happens. The jackfruit has this strong smell, so an orangutan comes and it takes the jackfruit and it takes it away from the tree. It moves the seeds away from the tree, which is what the tree is trying to do. Trees can't move, they can't run, they can't do anything, so they're just stuck in place. So they have to develop these ways to move their seeds around. So how do they do it? They You have these big fruit that have all this flesh in it that the orangutans take, they eat it, and then they sometimes eat the seeds, so they clean off all the flesh. Then they drop the seeds in a little nitrogen-rich packet, and that grows right there. So that's fleshy. So here's fleshy. You can see these are definitely telling you, hey, come and get us, come and pick us. We're ready. So that's how that would move around in nature. Now, dry seeds, they're going to move around by wind. So you have these little just dry husks that are going to fall and then blow around in wind. You see on the top here, these are mahogany seeds, and they're broken a little bit because I've kept them over time, but they have these little wings on them. So when they fall out of the mahogany tree, they fly. So that's how they move around. They don't rely on animals or humans to move them. They rely on the wind. So I talked about monoembryonic and polyembryonic seeds. This is something that you often see with mangoes. So monoembryonic is just a typical seed where it has one embryo, and that means it's a cross of the parent and whatever, or the parent tree that it comes from. Let's say again, an Edward mango, you have the Edward, then it's pollinated by something else. So that seed is not an Edward, it's an Edward crossed with something else. Just like you're not the exact same as your mom or your dad, you're a combination of both. So that's a monoembryonic seed. We also have polyembryonic. So here we're looking at a polyembryonic mango. You can see these little divisions. So what this means is one of these divisions is the sexual embryo, which will be different from the parent, but the rest of them are clones of the parent. So we take those apart and you can see some of these are going to be clones and one of these is not. So typically when you plant this, you would plant this and you would take out the biggest seedling and the smallest, because those would be the two that you guess would not be the polyembryonic, and the rest would be clones of the parent if you were trying to clone the parent. This is often done with rootstocks like turpentine mango, because you want your rootstocks to be very similar, and turpentine mangoes are polyembryonic. So this comes to me from someone who's watching now, Julieta, and I think she's in Broward, and I'm gonna read to you, this is a polyembryonic mango, the Floragon mango. And I'm going to read to you her email that she wrote. Take a little break from our learning here, get some fun. So she wrote, "Hi Jeff, given the topic of your next Tuesday session, I want to share a story. We have a mango tree in our front yard that produces the best, sweetest, fiberless, early producing mangoes. The tree is also anthracnose resistant and its seeds are polyembryonic. I've been on a quest to try to find out what type of mango this is. And after much research and many conversations, I came to the realization that the tree is most likely a Floragon. It turns out that a gentleman named John Kaiser, a resident of Fort Lauderdale, ate a mango and planted the seed in his backyard in 1932. The seed produced a new variety of yellow mango with no fiber, early fruiting, polyembryonic, which he named Floragon. I looked at public records and found the address for his house back in 1932, and drove there and knocked on the door. To my surprise, and people love that, by the way, when you go to their house and knock on the door, they love that. So to my surprise, the property is still there, and so is the original 90-year-old Floragon. I've included a picture below of the original Floragon tree, which is the picture that you're seeing here in the background there. That stump in the foreground is actually the original Edward tree, and it was cut down by Julieta. No, I'm kidding. That's not true. I don't know what that stump is. As you talk about seed propagation on Tuesday, I will probably be thinking about John and his mango and how the act of planting a single seed a century ago makes my and many others spring sweeter, my daiquiris juicier, and my tree climbing more prevalent to get that one last sun-kissed mango in my tree at home before the birds or God forbid, iguanas get to it first. So that was pretty cool. I thought I would share that. And I knew you'd like that, Jorge. I see you in the chat there. I knew this. Jorge is a big historian, so this was right up his alley. So let's get back to planting by seed. I always like to think about this when I think about horticulture. What would nature do? So we know these are jackfruit seeds we're looking at. We know that an orangutan would come, eat the jackfruit, separate the seeds, poop them out, and they would hit the ground. And when they hit the ground, they're usually going to lay on their side. So if I'm going to plant a seed, I usually lay it on its side because that's how it's going to fall in nature. So here we see some jackfruit seeds. You see the one there in the middle of the knife that's opening up, so it's getting ready to send out its first root. Okay, so here we have a fleshy fruit. So obviously what we want to do, remove that flesh, and then we find the seed. So we're going to plant that. We have a fleshy fruit. We remove the seed, which we see on the right. Remove the flesh. Then I like to let them dry out a little bit. So I put it on a paper towel, let it dry out. And then you have this husk sometimes. So you're going to remove that husk. Here on the avocado, you can see if you look at the bottom, it's clear there and you have this thin brown papery husk. So I would remove that as well. So we're removing the husk. And then we're going to take that seed. Here's the seed. We're going to plant it in a container. And we want the media, the soil, the media mix, we want it to be sterile. So we're going to purchase it. And when you purchase soil, it's usually sterile. And what I always like to do is add some perlite. So if you look at this picture, you see all the white things that look like styrofoam, that's perlite. That's going to help with drainage. And it's really important with your cuttings and your seeds that you have good drainage, that your soil remains moist but not super wet. And Cindy has a quick question. How long will a mango seed keep before planting? Not that long. Most of the tropical and subtropical fruit, you need to plant them pretty quick before before they get rotten. So I would do it pretty quick. I would say maybe you're going to have 3 weeks, but I would try to plant it pretty soon. Okay, so we're going to put it in this well-draining media, and I'm laying it down flat, and then I'm going to just cover it a little bit with soil, just a tiny bit, just like a dusting. And then we're going to water that. And we want to water that till the water comes out the bottom of the container. And then we check it each day and we see if the soil is moist, then we don't need to water that. If it's dry, then we want to water that. So we're keeping up this moisture, but we're not keeping it completely wet. So you don't want to have it on a timer where the water's just going off and off and off all the time, because you want to keep checking it. If you do have it on a timer, check on it and then maybe adjust the time. So you keep it moist but not super wet. And you notice this is sort of in dappled sun. So it's getting some sun, but it's not getting full sun. Okay, so we keep it moist and not wet, and then really this probably germinated in under 2 weeks. I would say it probably was like 10 days, 14 days maybe at the most that it germinated. So it's just that easy. And I know you've seen under your trees, you've seen seedlings come up, so you know how easy it is. The one thing that you always have to know is that that flesh around the seed is inhibiting the seed from germinating. So usually it's the flesh that does that. Up north, you're going to have seeds that need to go through a cool period before they'll germinate, because they come out maybe in the fall, so they know they need to get very cold before they're ready to come out. They're not going to sprout in the fall because the winter would kill them. But down here, we don't usually have that. We will sometimes have seeds that are very thick coat, and you need to scarify them. So you just rub a little sandpaper on them or something like that. Like a lignum vitae seed is a very good example of that. Should probably go through like a bird's stomach. That would scarify it enough to help it germinate. But as far as tropical fruit, I can't think of any that you really need to scarify. Just remove the flesh and you're good to go. Let them dry out. I just wanted to mention this. This is a propagation technique that I use a lot, and it's not really, doesn't fall into any of the categories. It's just basically, I take seedlings that have already germinated under trees or out in my yard or in the grove or wherever. And this is, I don't usually use this for tropical fruit, but I use this a lot for natives and things like that. So you go, you take out the seedling from the ground as well as you can, keeping that main taproot intact. So you kind of dig it out, you pull it out, and then you put it, this picture on the left is, again, good draining soil. I added some perlite. And then these are all Jamaican capers that I'm growing. And then this one right here is Simpson stopper. But if you look on the right, this is it. They're not growing that fast, but all of them survived, 100% survival rate. And you see it's still in good shape. It hasn't grown that much, but I just now have given it some fertilizer. So this is a technique that you can definitely use. If you can recognize those little seedlings, you can pull them out and grow them, and they've already germinated. And if you treat them right, they usually will live if you dig them out carefully enough. So I think this is a good technique that I would definitely use, and I do use. So here are the trees now. They haven't really grown that much. I've just now tipped all of them. So they're gonna branch out a little bit, and I just gave them some fertilizer now. But you can see they all survived. So this is gonna make a nice little privacy hedge for me of this Jamaican caper. Very good native plant. Okay, so we've gone through the whole steps. We're just gonna go through them one more time. And we went through the steps with a dicot. Now we're gonna do it with a monocot. The steps are the same. This is a palm. So you see the palms, the flesh on the left, and palms flesh, sometimes it's red, sometimes it's orange, sometimes it's white, but it goes from green to one of those colors to let you know it's mature. You take off that flesh, and they did it here with a knife because it was difficult to take off. So you see she took a knife, she scraped off the flesh. She's wearing gloves because you never know, unless it's something like a tropical fruit that you know is going to be okay to touch. Sometimes some of these seeds will have something in them that will make your fingers hurt or make you itch. So it's a good idea to wear gloves. Matthew is asking, how soon should you fertilize a seedling? So Matthew, the answer to that is, I waited a little while with those seedlings. I could have fertilized them right away. But when you have something that you actually grow from seed and it comes out and it's a seedling, it has some energy stored in that seed for a couple months. So I would go ahead and once the seeds germinate, when you move them from that container where you have multiple seeds to individual containers, that's where I would add a little slow release fertilizer. You can do it before that, but I think they're gonna have energy from their seed packets up until you're ready to move them to a bigger container. Okay, so she's taking off the flesh here. She gets all the flesh off. You see the seeds down there at the bottom. She's putting in some good, good, well-draining media. You see lots of perlite there. Now she's going to wet that, and then she wets it ahead of time. I think you don't need to do that. You can do it at the end. But she's laying the seeds down flat as if they were to fall in nature, putting them right at the top. And then there they all are. This is called a community pot. So you have 2, 4, 6 seeds in the pot. And when they sprout, you divide these into 6 individual pots. And then she's going to just dust, like I did with the mango seed, she's going to dust a little soil on top. And you see with the dusting, you still have a little lip on the container. You always want to have that little lip because you want there to be enough room for the water to kind of pool before it goes down. If the soil goes all the way to the top, then it's much more difficult to water. Okay, I use just a regular watering can. She's using a mister. Misters are really good if you have very small, tiny seeds. These seeds were bigger, so she didn't actually need a mister, but if you have really small seeds, like if you're growing vegetable seeds, the mister helps a lot because a regular hose will push the seeds all over the place. So she's misting, and there they are, all watered. Aftercare is crucial, so you're going to put it not in the full sun, not in full shade, but kind of dappled. You're going to check that water each day to see that it's not super dry, it's not super moist. If you keep them super moist, you're going to get what's called dampening off. You're going to get a fungus. You're going to get rot. So you got to be aware of that. That's the other reason you use real clean soil, so you don't introduce some kind of fungi or something bad. Okay, Gladiola is asking, it took about 2 months for my mango seed to come out as a decent baby plant. So now she has a small plant. What is next after it's about 2 to 4 inches tall? Well, if you have it in a container by itself, Gladiola, in a 1 gallon container, you can just leave it in there until it's a little bigger. And unless it's a polyembryonic mango, remember, it's not going to be the same as the parent. So what you've grown is a seedling, and you don't know what it's going to be. It's whatever the mother was crossed with whatever the father is, and it's going to take a long time for that to finally fruit. So what I would do with that is find a mango you really like and graft it onto that. So once that's about the size of a pencil, then you can graft into that. And we did a webinar on grafting. So if you want that, just email me for that and I'll send you the link to that. But that's what I would do with that. I wouldn't try to grow that unless you're just doing it for fun, because you're probably not gonna get real good fruit anytime soon. Okay, so we'll go back to the poll question. Trying to pull it up. Here we go. Never can find that. Okay, growing plants from seed means what? You guys should get 100% here. Dr. J, who is a professor at FIU, he's appalled at my teaching techniques. I teach the test. So far we have 100%. So growing plants from seed means what? The offspring will be diverse. It can be done economically. It can be done somewhat easily. It's sometimes slow. Both A and D, both B and C, or all of the above. You guys, 26 people out of 39 answered, and 100% got it correct. So you guys did learn something, because a couple of you got it wrong last time, but most of you got it right in the first place. So that's, I'm making my questions a little too easy, I think. But I'm an easy grader. I'm an easy teacher. you take my class, you're probably going to get an A unless you really mess up. Okay, so sexual propagation, to finish up here, it is from seed. It is cheap. It can be very cheap. It can be very easy. It has genetic variety, which can be very good. It sometimes can be slow. Whoops, sorry about that. And it's not the same as the parent. Debbie has a question. Will the mango come out the same as the original mango? I heard that the mango will become stringy. So remember, Debbie, you have two types. You have the polyembryonic and the monoembryonic. If you have polyembryonic, there's a good chance it's the same as the parent. If the parent was not stringy, it was fiberless, so will be the polyembryonic youngster. But if it was monoembryonic with just one embryo, you don't know, because the parent could be fiberless, not stringy, but it could have been crossed with something that's very stringy, like a turpentine, and then the seedling can be stringy. So that's the answer to your question, Debbie. Okay, so if you guys have any more technique, or I'm sorry, I'm reading the group chat at the same time. If you have any more questions, put them into the chat. Here's my email, sflhort@ufl.edu. You can ask for the link or ask to get put onto my email list. Michael, I appreciate your comment. Celia says, at what point do you pot up a jackfruit so the root won't go spiraling out of control? That's a good question. So you have these seedlings and then the root goes down. So if you're in a shallow container, the root's going to hit the bottom of that container and then go sideways, and that's not good. So jackfruit really like to have a deep taproot. So a lot of times we'll grow them in what's called citrus pots, which are these thin pots, but they're very long. So you can do that, or you can just wait till that root kind of gets to the bottom of whatever it's in and then move it up into a bigger container. You always want that root, that taproot, to be able to grow without hitting the bottom of the pot and the side of the pot. Once it hits the bottom and the side, it starts wrapping around. That's not good for the seedling. It's not good for the plant. So you always want to check your roots to make sure they're not hitting the bottom and going sideways. Toby says, other than checking the seed yourself, how would one know if a mango or other fruit you are buying is monocot or dicot? Well, monocot or dicot you would know pretty easy. I think you might be asking about polyembryonic or monoembryonic. Monocot or dicot you would know, like all mangoes are dicots, all of them. But not all mangoes are monoembryonic, some are polyembryonic. So I believe in the EDIS, it does say, yes, she's saying that's the question she's asking. I believe in the EDIS it will say if it's polyembryonic or not, and it has a good list of cultivars. Jorge is also saying you can check Tropical Acres Farm website, and that will also give you information. I think those are two good ways that you can find out if it's polyembryonic or monoembryonic without actually checking the seed itself. Okay, very good. So I think that's it. I don't see any more questions coming up. You're quite welcome, Toby. Thanks everybody for coming. And in 2 weeks, we're going to do the avocado. So hope to see you there for that. And you guys have a great day. Have a great rest of your week. And thank you for being here on this Tropical Fruit Tuesday. Bye-bye, guys.